You're listening to the Night Demon Network. Go to nightdemon.net/subscriber to unlock more exclusive content.
Hello, and welcome to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. I'm your host, Nesbitt, and we're continuing our series of interviews this week. Today, Jarvis sits down with Brian Patrick and Phil Ross of Sentry and Manilla Road. It's a cool interview. They discuss their history in music, getting into bands and the end of Manilla Road. Lots of really interesting stuff in here. Hope you enjoy.
What's up, dudes?
Good morning, man. How are you?
I'm here with Phil Ross, Brian Patrick.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah?
Yeah, great to see you.
Who are you guys?
I'm Hell Roadie with Sentry.
Yeah, Phil Ross with Sentry and a couple other things too, man. Yeah.
We're here in Tulsa, of all places. We've been to Tulsa many times together.
We've been here.
It's like our backyard now.
Yeah, man. Kind of remember you guys telling me about this being your home away from home a little bit. And
one of them, you know.
One of many,
right?
Yeah.
We've got a few now. Hamburg, Cleveland,
yes,
St. John's, Newfoundland.
Oh my God.
Been a hot spot for us, you know? Yeah. Yeah. You gotta, you know, there's sometimes places become that, right?
Absolutely.
You know? We started coming here and playing a small bar, the Sound Pony. On the floor, we had a couple friends in town, right? You know, and then it grew from there. Then we were doing the downtown lounge and Vanguard, Canes, you know, so kind of organically grew, you know. So you guys are from Wichita.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Born and raised.
No.
No?
I was not.
I was born in Del Rio, Texas.
Okay.
On the Air Force Base.
Oh, right. So
1966.
Military brat.
That's right.
Did you move around a lot?
A lot. Yeah, I went to 12 different schools in 12 years.
What was that like?
Well, the one school I went to was for 3 years, so you can imagine there was one time I went to 3 different schools in 1 year, so it was pretty intense. You know, you learn how to make friends real quick,
right,
and know who your enemies are real quick.
What's it like making friends and then never seeing them again?
Yeah, man, that's a good question.
Right.
Never really thought about it.
You just kind of were used to it
yes,
at a young age. I remember when I was like in the 4th grade, I had a best friend, Danny Voss, and one day, I mean, we were like best buddies, right? And like one day he didn't show up to school.
Yeah.
Like, and and the teacher told us all that like, yeah, he transferred schools, he moved to a different state. And like, I didn't even know, you know, and I was crushed, right?
Yeah.
You know?
It doesn't.
Maybe like when you're young, like when things happen, it kind of fucks you up. Like,
but you know, we lived all over. You know, I started school in Vegas, and my brother was born in England, in Suffolk County, England.
Crazy.
So,
when did that all stop? Like when you just became an adult?
No, when I was about 13.
And that's when you ended up in Wichita.
Yep.
Okay, and you've been there ever since.
Ever since.
Right.
Yep.
What was it like back then compared to now?
Way different.
How?
As far as I don't know. The city has gotten way bigger.
So it was slower way of life.
It still is.
And there's a lot of like aviation history there, right?
Yeah,
it's the air capital of the world.
Yeah, Boeing, Textron, Bombardier, Cessna, Raytheon,
Right.
and 1 million
Airbus.
contractors around it.
Yes.
So were you finding that like everybody you knew kind of their parents worked in that industry?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
My grandpa was there for 40 years. I know.
My
Brian's
mom retired from Boeing Spirit.
Your brother too, right? Worked there.
My brother worked there for a while. Yeah.
Right. That's so interesting.
My stepson works there now.
Wow.
Yep. So
You guys could have been like the Bruce Springsteens of, Wichita.
Jesus.
It was a Wichita lineman, though. That,
right. That's right.
Campbell, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like...
Well, a little history. On Halloween night in like 1931 or 2 was the very first live performance of an electric guitar was in Wichita, Kansas.
No shit.
And it's in
exactly
a
right.
museum there that also houses a few of Shark's guitars.
That's correct.
The Sedgwick County Historical Museum.
That's correct.
Got a really good
We're
curator.
speaking of Mark the Shark Shelton from Manilla Road, which
That's
we'll
right.
get into.
Yes, sir.
So, was it like a World's Fair Expo or something?
No, a guy just came in and he set up in a bar and he plugged his guitar in, and that's the first live performance.
It's like a little dinky looking acoustic guitar that has like a pickup in the sound hole.
Yes, it was
But
great, man.
It's legit the first.
Wichita's got a lot of history.
That's amazing, man.
I mean, we have Joe Walsh and Mark, of course, graduated, same high school, North High.
Right.
So I mean, there was some idols there,
That's nuts, man.
Yeah.
So when did you start getting into music, Brian?
Man, when I was a young child, my father was in the rock, and I grew up with Rush and Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix, the staples, and Mata Hoople and Uriah Heep, so all these bands were a real big staple.
But was it rock right away?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to understand when I was growing up though, there was like these teen bands like David Cassidy and all this stuff that was big in the 70s.
Band.
Sure,
kind of started all with the Monkees.
But there was absolutely. But then there was Kiss, that came out. That was my first. 1977 was my first concert. My
Kiss
mother took me to.
Changed everything for that generation.
Absolutely.
Like that was every kid's first concert, and it was like, and half of them started bands.
Yes.
You know what I mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm like a generation later, but Kiss still did it to me.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What about you, Phil?
I came about it in a reverse way.
Here we go. This is gonna be good.
He's laughing. So I always deserve and catch a lot of hell for how horrible my taste in music was.
Gangster rap?
No. So
Which isn't bad.
no. In a nutshell, essentially. So a couple days ago, it was really fun. Sentry played in Wichita.
Right.
And it was like a hometown show, and we can talk about that a little bit too. But my uncle was there, and he took me to my first concert in 1997. First real big concert. And it was the Smashing Pumpkins.
Okay.
At the Kansas Coliseum, and I loved that kind of stuff. I mean, so I was born in '84, so I was 13 years old, 6th grade at that point, and that blew me away because I'd never seen an arena show,
right?
And that is what bit me. I wanted to be that. I wanted to do that, and I didn't even. I think at the time I played the euphonium and the trombone. I was like, man, that's not what I saw on stage.
Yeah,
a trombone.
It's had some riffs, for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
And after that, I kind of got into like lots of horrible stuff, just suburban white boy, like new metal and stuff. And then finally, when I was 15 or 16, my dad bitched at his brother and said he's into Tool or whatever the hell that is. And he's like, you got to get him something better. And I remember the two records that first two records I ever owned were Suck on This by Primus, and he also bought me Weasels Rip My Flesh by Zappa and the Mothers. Nice. And that changed everything again, man.
Well, I mean, look, in those days, especially being in the middle of the country, before high-speed internet or any of that stuff, I mean, you kind of got to go off what the mainstream is.
I didn't know any better, yeah.
And I tell people that all the time, like, it's, especially in our scene, you know, everybody's a poser, it's like, it's never too late to get into something cool.
Sure.
If you're not exposed to it,
right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, look at all the demographic for older metal bands now is like 2 or 3 generations younger.
Yes.
I mean, that's insane, right?
Yes.
Like we go out with Sirith Ungol and it's like that. It's like their grandkids, you know?
Totally.
And the audience
I can totally relate.
Right?
I can totally relate. Yeah.
But that's cool. That's, you know, I mean, that's kind of what you always want to have, right?
Sure.
You know, instead of like, because rock and roll is generally, I mean, it's probably 65 years old now or something, right? Around
yes,
70s,
yes.
60s.
Sure.
Sounds funny. It's kind of like, you know, it's pretty.
It doesn't
Yeah.
because like I turned 40 last year,
Right,
man,
right.
and I know. And I've done some time with some legit heavy metal grandpas, man, and been lucky to do so. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
But it's kind of funny when you think about that, like, you know, all the great metal that came out of like the early 80s, like the mid 50s, the gap between that is a shorter span of time between the early 80s and now, right? If you really think, it doesn't feel like it, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
So, and then, like, you know, because the rock and roll is like, it's not like classical music. It's not hundreds of years old. So
correct.
we're still experimenting with the cycle of it. Like the Stones are still playing in their 80s, right? So we don't, it's still a wild frontier. And like, but you saw, you know, it's cool to have people the age of your grandkids, like filling up the majority of the house, because we're traditionally told that when you're 18 or 20, you peak. When you're 30, you're done.
Right.
And, you know, you can watch a PBS special and watch, you know, Frankie Valli, you know, like lip sync. But his audience is that demographic. Those early rock and roll bands didn't really pick up younger fan bases through the years. There might have been people that liked it and respected it,
Sure.
but there was no fandom.
That's
Do you know what I mean?
That's what cracks me up about maybe the poser stuff you're talking about too, with how new of an art form that heavy metal really is. I know there are the old gods or whatever, but like you said, the 80s, man, this wasn't 300 years ago.
Yeah.
This isn't something like a classical art form. And so the orthodox nature of this genre kind of lends itself to, man, when you see something new, you hear something new, there's still new ground to be broke here.
Absolutely.
In this thing.
You could tell by the fact that there's like 350 subgenres of metal, right?
Yeah, and counting, man.
Right.
And counting.
Absolutely. So, all right. So you guys are in Wichita. So, Bryan, what's the story with you and Manilla Road? When did that whole thing start?
Man, it was 1981.
Okay.
And a buddy of mine, David Bishop, we went over to watch this local band, practice in their living room.
Okay.
And we went over there, and it was immediately, me and Mark just bonded immediately. He was 9 years older than I was, so it was kind of like, you know, a little brother type thing.
How old were you?
I was 15.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
and like 25 to 15 or 24 to 15, it's like, it's 9 years older, but when you're that age, it's like every year is like 5 years.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, we did all kinds of stuff. You know, I was sort of the kind of guy that always hung around older people, you know, people my age, it was like, okay, I'm going to go this way. Right. And so me and him kind of bonded, and you know, eventually it got into, you know, I'd come over more and more, and they's like, hey, we got a show coming up. We're playing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you know, at this place. I was like, oh, fuck, you know, you want to move equipment? Well, sure.
So that's where you got the name Hell Road.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And so was Manilla Road like ever like touring in those days, or was it all regional?
No,
or
it
local?
was all regional and local, you know, around Kansas, you know, Hutchinson,
Right.
Great Bend, you know.
Were they playing with any like national acts that would come through?
Ted Nugent,
Right.
Crocus came into town. It was real funny. We were talking about when they played with Ted Nugent, Mark was on stage doing a sound check. It was at the Cotillion Ballroom. And Ted comes in, grabs a chair, flips it around, and sits down and just watches Mark. And Mark's like, God damn, Ted Nugent said, oh, fuck, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, and this was very young. This was like 82 when this was. So Mark was really still experimenting with his style.
Yeah.
You know, back then he was more space rock feel. You know, he didn't really start getting into his chunk and chops until really Crystal Logic came around.
Right. So like the songwriting was more about rocking and jamming.
Yes,
instead
more
of,
like a biker bar feel.
It was,
you know?
it was like more Mahogany Rush than Metallica.
Right.
That's exactly right. So. And, you know, he was a big, you know, Gallagher fan, you know, Roy Gallagher and stuff. So, you know, he had all kinds of different influences. And
that's funny. I never put that together, the Roy Gallagher connection. But now that I think about it, like,
you can hear pieces, you know.
Kind of like, it's like, I don't want to say folk rock,
right?
But
you
like
know, Frank Marino, too.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Dude, he's way into Mahogany Rush and Marino, for sure.
Yep.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. So, you know, and like I said, you know, the only way I could get in the bars back then was to haul equipment, you know, and so
the drinking age back then was what, 18?
Was 18,
yeah.
Yes. So, but, you know, even though I was 15, 16, he would always grab a pitcher of beer and I'd sit behind his 2 stacks, you know, and he'd say, here, brother, you know,
nice.
All right, thanks, you know. But then I'd sit there and the more I drank, the more I kind of mimic him and make fun of him, you know, as he sang, you know, because it was like, I sat back there behind it, you know, and of course Rick would look over like, what the fuck's going on over there, you know? And then Randy started laughing, you know, because me and Randy would take a lot of acid in the days, you know, and so it was a lot of fun, but that's how I sort of kind of created my style.
That's interesting because obviously Mark's got a very unique voice, you know.
Yes.
So when you stepped into the band in later years, it was like, whoa, what's going on? You know, where they? Because for us who didn't know, it was like, well, where do you find this guy?
Right.
You know, is it like because nowadays when a popular band wants a new member, they just go to the internet. They go to YouTube, and they're like, "Okay, who's copying what we do?
Who's in the best cover band? Yeah, the Journey thing or stuff like that."
Many bands have done it.
Yeah,
you
right.
know?
Absolutely.
So, which is always ends up interesting, you know, because it's like some of these guys they don't really have experience of being in a band, you know, right?
I think in the 90s is when you first started kind of stepping in when he couldn't necessarily make it.
So tell us about that. So throughout the years this is happening, Manilla Road's a band and basically a local Wichita band, right? But they're putting out records, right? And somebody's hearing them somewhere. I'm sure the distribution model wasn't, you know.
They were through important up until the 90s, essentially.
Right,
yeah.
That's right. And so after that kind of fell through, you know, they kind of got discouraged, you know, and they were creating families and, you know, having kids.
It was the Sarah Thungle story, same thing.
You know, everybody was, you know, having families and stuff. And then it was about 98. Me and Mark loved to play golf. And we were on the golf course, and I just popped out. I was like, man, we need to get the band back, you know.
So how long had the band not been playing at that point?
My brother and Randy were playing in my brother's basement, sort of kind of writing music from 94 to 96 or 7, but then nothing really came about it, nothing recorded.
But like Manilla Road, as far as playing shows in the 90s, like was there an
96 maybe was a couple shows and that's it.
Was there ever the time where the band broke up?
When the Circus Maximus in 92, because that was a different lineup. And Scott was basically done at that point.
Scott Park, the original bass player.
Yes.
That's fun. So Sarah Thungle breaks up in 92 as well.
Yep.
Like completely.
Isn't that weird, man?
Yeah. And Scott, you know, really needed some help with his sobriety. And So he took care of himself that way. Sold all of his equipment off. Got rev.
That's exactly what Sarah's on.
Because it was a trigger.
Yeah.
You know, it was.
Right.
You know, Scott did come out to one of our shows in Wichita when we did a Reformation show in the 2000s in Wichita. He came out, and it was really nice to see him.
Yeah.
You know, but you could tell he was very uncomfortable.
Right. See, I wonder if like the whole, you know, like it mainly comes from like hair bands complaining about the grunge thing that it killed everything. And again, that goes back to like when we're living in a mainstream society. I mean, when the tides change, everything changes, right?
Sure.
And the public goes, okay, that's not cool anymore because that's what the mainstream is telling me. So I'm going along with it, whether it's in my heart or not, right? And
because you're force fed.
But I wonder if there's like a ripple effect like to that, even if it doesn't like directly affect the most successful band. It's kind of like all these bands lived through the 80s and tried really hard to quote unquote make it, get a record deal, get on a tour, and a lot of them didn't, but they were still putting out records that somebody liked, right? But then maybe there's a ripple effect early 90s because the tides change. When the bigger bands can't even do it, then the smallest of bands like maybe feel like they have like no hope at all, right? You know, unless they change their sound, which everybody tried to do that, and it failed almost every metal band that tried to do that. You know?
Well, you know, at that time, Mark and Randy were sort of kind of trying to record some stuff, you know, in their home studios. You know, never in the same room together. Randy was at his place, Mark was at his place, you know, and
home studios back then. I mean,
they were starting. They were starting. They were just cranking up, and so. You know, Mark, he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, man, you know, we should do a shark project, you know. And he goes, oh, I like that, you know. What you know, it's like, let's sing about the megalodon. He goes, fuck, you know. so then, you know, we started writing this album, and you know, that album, which released as Atlantis Rising, we wrote song to song to song to song, right in a row, because it's a complete story. He wrote the whole story of all three of the mythologies, you know, coming together to fight the fucking force of evil, you know, and you know, and rebuild Earth the way we want it to be built, you know, and so he.
You sound like you could be the president right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's make it great, baby. Yeah. So, God damn it, you had to go there. So anyway, you know, when we sent it off we went to Germany in 2000. Was the very first time.
So wait, hang on, you're singing in the band now?
No, I was still the roadie manager. Okay, and. Go to the Bang Your Head Festival, and Mark just totally threw his voice out the day before, doing all these fucking interviews.
Hang on. Let's walk it back a little bit. So you're going to Bang Your Head in 2000.
Yes.
And has the band been to Europe before?
No, first time.
Okay.
Very first time.
And what's the size of Bang Your Head Festival in the year 2000?
It was about 15,000.
Yeah. Unreal. Yeah. So this is like a very fucking deal.
Absolutely. And it was so fun because the day we went on, there was nothing but a sea of red shirts, of Manilla Road shirts, and there was just a horde of Greeks and Italians just came for this. I mean, they really bombed us. I mean, we were not prepared for this.
Right.
And that's when me and Mark really understood what Manilla Road meant. Right.
So the band's a 3-piece.
Absolutely.
At this point,
yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
So sorry. Yeah, you go to Bang Your Head.
Yes.
And it's one gig.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How'd the show go? The performance.
Some of it went okay. Other than there was some parts where our drummer at the time, Troy Olson, great kid. He was a drum prodigy from the university. He could do steel drums, and he makes these steel drums. He's like one of 3 or 4 people in the world that makes them. Okay,
right.
And so he needed to do sheet music. All right. Okay.
Like
so he charted Manilla Road note for note. Randy's shit, dude.
Is he reading it while he's playing?
Yes. And I'm right there. Okay. It's an outdoor festival.
Right.
It's fucking windy as fuck, man. Okay. So it was a disaster, you know. It was, and so Mark during like Hammer of the Witches, decides to go out on the catwalk, okay? And he's fucking just big dicking it out there, solo.
Yeah, so Bang Your Head Festival always has the big ego ramp.
Yes.
It's like it goes like 30 feet into the audience right in the middle of the stage. Right.
And so he's out there, and I'm looking, and I was like, oh, fuck. Because I know he's got to start singing again, right into the chorus out of the solo, and he's not going to make it, man.
Right.
And I'm like, I look at Troy, and he's getting ready to change into the chorus because that's what he's doing. He's like, and he's playing Randy's notes pretty damn good.
Right.
I was really impressed with him. He was a great drummer, but he didn't know the feel and didn't understand to be looking up and was like, okay, I just need to keep going and change, That's how you're a professional, know, and I love the group of guys I play with now because it makes it so much easier, so, but back then it was really tough. The band just stopped, Mark's and that was it. That was the end of the song.
Man, and I was hoping you were going to say that was your moment. You went to the
No.
Then,
So then we get back into Wichita, and there was some. They wanted, we were looking for a new drummer and stuff at the time, and they wanted to do some shows. And Mark was like, "Oh yeah, I don't feel like singing today." And I said, "Give me the mic, man."
Yeah.
He says, "Oh, good luck with that." All right. So I was like, "Open the gates." Boom. Road Kings. Boom. Masquerade Death. Boom. And he's like, "God damn, Brian, won't you just do this?" I'm like,
seriously, just like that.
Yeah.
Wow. And you never fucked around like singing before, like in the band, like he never heard you sing.
No.
For all that time?
Yeah.
For 20 fucking years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, what were you just like woodshed the whole time at your private?
This is me, and this is me in 1981, 82. I'm in my room. I got my headphones on. I got Manowar on. I'm fucking playing, bass and fucking singing. Doing the air shake. I'm living my dream. And it's amazing. I can't tell you.
It's just crazy to think that like you during that whole time, it's like you never sang. Did you ever sing in another band?
No, I did sing in like choir and ensemble. I was men's ensemble. Right. I did solo.
But so you never sang around the guys?
No,
ever?
No.
Yeah, it wasn't like them asking him, "Hey, we know. Maybe could you try this?" It was him saying, "Shut up and give me the mic." And there's only a few people in this world that could tell Mark to shut up and do something, and Brian is one of them. And just ripped it.
And that's how it started, man.
That's such a trip.
So then I went over in 2002 for our first Greek show.
Where was that, in Athens?
That was in Athens at the Gagarin.
Okay.
And it was a sold-out show. It was amazing. But that show we realized real quick, because we played a lot of the new shit.
Right.
We didn't go back.
Right.
Okay, and we learned real quick, we got to start playing this old... Mark's like, "Oh, damn it." I was like, "Hey, we have to, man.
Right.
We have to.
Right.
This is what they want. They're the fans.
Right.
We're the band.
Right.
We deliver what they want."
Right.
And that was sort of our, call to, how we did our business. It was... we're going to be ambassadors of metal, when we're not going to go over and bullshit people, we're not going to be mean and evil. We're going to be approachable and, be ourselves. And that's just how the Midwest guys are, and that's what I wanted, people to understand, because when we first started going over, people were really afraid of Americans, and it was like, why, we're just like you guys,
right.
So, it was nice, to really build that rapport with our fan base, and it's not really fans anymore; they're family.
Right? Yeah. No, I feel that. I feel that. Yeah. So, like, from that moment on, where you just sang at that rehearsal, I mean, what was it? So Mark just all of a sudden, like, after all that time, I'm not.
It was no. His ego's too fucking big for that shit. No. It took a lot of hard work on my part to really prove my worth.
Right.
And the difference with me is when I'm live, it's on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when I'm in the studio,
Sure.
I don't feel that.
Yeah, that's hard, man.
I don't feel
hate
that.
The studio.
I fucking do too.
I love the creative process.
Yes,
but
I do.
I get red light fever, man.
It's not that.
Yeah,
it's just like, but Mark was like, I really want the live roadie. Where's that at? Well, fuck you, man.
It's like, where's the 4,000 Greeks down here in the basement? I don't see them yet.
I'm in a fucking dungeon. It's fucking stinks like nicotine and it's fucking bullshit. I have no inspiration down here. So, yeah.
That's a trip, man.
Yeah.
But that's cool. But then from that moment on, you're doing it. You guys are making records.
Just rolling on the road, man. Yeah.
And so then who comes back to play drums after this? Randy coming back? Or
No, we got a guy named Scott Peters to start with us in Atlantis Rising. He was with us in Spiral Castle, 2 albums. And then we picked up Corey Christner. And he was our drummer for 3-4 albums.
Gates of Fire, Voyager, and Playground. Right?
Playground, yes, 3 albums.
3 albums.
Yeah, and so, and then after that, we picked up Randy. Nordy in 2011.
So, explain that process. So, Nordy's a German guy,
yes.
Right? So how does this
well,
happen?
we had a show scheduled for the Hammer of Doom,
right? Which is a German,
which is
Doom festival,
which is an Oliver's festival, and about 8 months before, our Corey had gotten in a little trouble and couldn't travel. And so Mark's like, fuck, man, this is going to be our first show. We're going to have to cancel. I was like, well, you need to let him know now. You know? So we let Oliver know, hey, sorry, this is under the circumstances. We can't do it. And he says, no, that's bullshit. Oliver, you know how he is, And he goes, you have 8 months. Find somebody. It's like, fuck, And he says, if you don't know somebody, I know somebody.
Okay.
And we knew Nordy before. Right. We knew he was a Randy Fox fan.
He started the first ever Manilla Road website.
That's correct.
As well.
In '98,
okay.
Right, at thetruemetal.org.
Wow, okay.
And so we did a lot of writing, internet back and forth, and I first met Nordy in 2000 at the Bang Your Head.
Right, okay.
That was when I very first met him live in person. And so, throughout the years, I'd see him, at different festivals and stuff. But then in 2011, like I said, the Hammer of Doom, we went to Germany. We rehearsed 2 days, and we played the show, 2-hour plus show.
Right.
And Nordy got off the stage. He goes, "My God, I hope this isn't the last time."
Right.
And Mark looked at him. He says, "Well, you want the job?" "My God, yes, I do. I really." It's like, "Well, you know what you got to do to earn this job?" He's like, "What? Anything. Just be here." Right.
Yeah.
Just be ready.
Show up.
Right.
Just be ready.
And then so now though you have to navigate you've got this Wichita band with all Wichita dudes from the scene for a few decades.
Right.
You're rehearsing in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the basement layer, but now your drummer is overseas.
That's correct.
Right?
It was a little tough at first, but then once we brought him over and started recording, we had all his drum tracks. So we were able to dump all his tracks on say a little phone, and run that through a PA.
Right.
And we just cranked up. It's boom, 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 bam, and we just played. So it was always perfect.
Got it. Got it.
The drums are always great. Right. So we always tease him. It's like, hey, you got to play like
we
this.
just rehearsed for 4 months to your album tracks, and you show up in Germany and you don't hear any of it from him. Because his improvisation,
which is honestly an anomaly for a German.
Yeah,
because Germans
their structure.
It's if you ever hear German metal, there's a very traditional sense to it. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of swing is a very American thing. Blues and feel, and for them it's they want. It's like a machine. They want to be perfect.
Well, the difference I think between them, on the American side, drummers and the Europeans is Nordy doesn't understand marching band.
Right.
they've never done that.
We all went through some of that. Randy, myself, we all
went through a sort of
playing horns or percussion.
Right. So we get the ideas, but he doesn't. But his drum teacher taught Sheila E.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. In Germany. So
wow.
So
it's funny you mentioned swing too, because I think some of the only older road tunes that Noity, I'm not kidding, cannot play were some of Rick Fisher's old songs that are kind of like shuffly.
Yeah.
And then some of Randy's super like triplet, super swing stuff.
I can't wrap my head around it. Even some of the Randy stuff.
It's like
was a lot of LSD, baby.
It's fucking bad, dude. I didn't get it at first, and then over time I'm like, okay, I see what he's doing, and then you see it live and you're like, what? The couple times I've seen him come back and do sets with you guys, I really one time thought this guy's gonna have a heart attack on stage. This is it.
Let me tell you, back in the day, he was a complete animal.
Yeah.
He's absolutely. I'm telling you right now, is my favorite all-time drummer ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
one of the best musicians I've ever played with.
When he started adding keyboards, and all this stuff, and he's playing it. Live.
I feel like I want to hear a solo album from him. That's just
you're talking about a guy that could do it all, play any instrument. He could front a band for sure. He has that in his locker.
But the cool thing about it was a competition between him and Mark. Okay, Randy was way smarter as far as intelligence and stuff, and it just really would tweak Mark. So it was always who's going to go faster? It was like who's going to go fastest. And it was always a competition, and so it got to the point where we had this huge cage for his drum set and his keyboards.
Made out of surplus steel from Boeing.
That wasn't enough. He had to bring in his stack of Marshalls behind him, and have his Mockingbird hang from, so he could do hammer-ons. Just to show Mark that he ain't shit.
Playing a string instrument while he's playing drums. But that's what I love about it, right? Because that's what, rock and roll, it needs some chaos. You have to have that, and that definitely brings it.
Road had it in spades in good and bad ways.
Yes.
No, I feel you know, and I know,
to have a band today, one, you have to have a camaraderie and a respect between your brothers in the band. Okay, you're not all going to see eye to eye. Okay, you're not all going to be doing the same thing all the time. Okay, but when it comes down to it, you have to really embrace each other and support each other. Even though this rabid fucking squirrel over here just gets like out of control sometimes. But I appreciate that, I understand it and I embrace it, It's like sometimes I got to reel him in, it's like, okay.
And sometimes you got to sick me on the problem. We got to get it figured out.
Take care of that,
Yeah, right.
And so, like I said, today's band, I see a lot of struggles, and it's hard. Life's tough, man.
Sure.
But once you get that camaraderie, I've got 2 Germans in my band that I would do anything for, and they're very good, professional, and just good people,
Right.
And that's what I try to surround myself with.
No, that makes sense.
Like you're a good fucking dude.
Thanks.
We've known each other for a long time, so.
Yeah, we're all still here doing it in some capacity.
Yeah, man. I remember when I first met you, you came into the record store that my print shop was behind at the time, and I think Derek had sent you in there.
Yeah.
I didn't see Night Demon because I didn't know who the band was the night before, and I immediately was like, I dig out-of-towners coming into my record store peddling their stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just because I would do that. I've done self-released records and stuff like that, and I appreciate that. And at that time, man, I was just the T-shirt guy from Manilla Road. I was not in the band.
Right.
And that was 10-ish years ago.
Yeah.
And so much stuff has happened in our lives, man, since then.
Yeah, totally.
It's been a wild ride, dude.
Yeah, I used to do that. Like, we would buy extra records from the label.
Yeah.
We were on like a major at that time, and still I would go, like, that was the daily job when on tour. When you get to a city, go to all the record stores and try and get your records in the racks if they're not distributed there.
Yeah.
We thought they should have been there, but a lot of times they weren't. And that's how and then that grows over time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, because you come back there next time. Hey, man, those 8 records aren't here anymore.
But
Right?
it's funny you say that because our album got released last year in March,
The Sentry self-titled record,
and so our first show isn't up to Hammers.
I was there, yeah.
And we're walking down the streets and all the record shops, it's right in the fucking window.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
High roller, baby.
Yeah, and Grease is great for metal records.
Absolutely.
Out of this world, yeah.
And so it was, these were shops that I'd never been into before.
Right.
It's like,
And it's in the window, dude.
yeah, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go say hi.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah. And they were like, oh my God, Manilla Road. It's like, hey, yes.
Yeah, it's almost like since that business model has shrunk so much, it's almost more manageable now. You know what I mean? Because you can connect with the people that are still peddling these wares.
Yeah.
And like, if people want to get them, they know where to go. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So,
Yeah.
but all right, so we're in the 2010s now.
All right.
Nordy's in the band.
Yep.
You're singing.
Yep.
Mark's playing guitar.
Yep.
And I think Josh was playing bass. You
Yes,
had Josh
he was.
for a while.
Yes.
We had some good times meeting
Yes.
up at different festivals.
Yes, we did.
Bang Your Head Again. I remember we did that
Yes,
together.
absolutely.
Again. And things happen, and Josh's out of the band. Phil comes in.
Yep.
Right? How'd that all happen?
Well,
End of 2016, they said, we're going on our last run with Josh. When we come back, the audition was Mark coming up to my record store, the same one that you had been shopping records at me in. And it was like, what the fuck are you doing here alone? I'd never seen him go anywhere without Brian or Derek.
Okay.
And he was kind of in there, Brian knows, with his duster, his like this long leather thing. I'm like, dude, it's 100 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Like, and he's got,
we call him Uncle Duster.
Uncle Duster. So Uncle Duster's in the record store, and he wants to go next to this pub and buy me an iced tea, he said. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take a Budweiser. You can have tea.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I got a problem. And I'm just like, yeah, how many shirts do you need? What the fuck you want? You know? And he's like, no. Derek, who we all know has been Mark's engineer since 08, 07 maybe.
Yeah.
Derek said he's seen you play. And I'm like, seen me play what? Because at that time, man, I was in like a math, like indie rock-ish math band where my bass was tuned high and I'm two-hand tapping.
Right.
And I was also in a ska band.
Nice.
That's right. A local ska band called Phil, which was from the 90s.
That's so funny when people say, like, Steve Albini did this interview, quick side note, and then he's like, people always ask me, like, is rock is dead? Is rock dead? Everybody's saying that, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, ska isn't even fucking dead. Of course rock's not dead.
Yeah.
But anyway, so...
Phil had been like a band that I had idolized in high school and stuff because I was a horn player. They have horns.
Okay.
So anyways, I was like, well, have you seen me play, Mark? And he's like, no, but Derek says you're good. Will you come over tomorrow? And I said, yeah. And I went back to the record store, and my partner at the time, Adam, was like, did he ask you to play in the fucking band? I'm like, dude, he did. He's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I guess I'm going over there tomorrow, man.
Yeah.
And I go over there, and the audition was, can you play an E minor scale? So not a big deal, man. Just like, yeah, sure, dude. And then he's like, I really like that gold hardware on your bass. And I'm like, yeah.
An E minor scale?
So the bar, I would never speak ill of any former members of Manilla Road because all of them, no matter how small or how big, furthered Mark's vision.
Sure.
And I wouldn't be here without their sacrifices.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And I say be here as in, I wouldn't know you, man. I wouldn't know anybody that I know now.
Right, no, I got you.
So the bar was low. Okay.
So you mean he's looking for like musicality, like
I need someone I can
knowledge of some theory.
I need someone I can speak to just a little bit, or
communicate in musical terms.
I later found out he didn't even need that. He needed someone that could figure it out for their fucking selves. Okay. I don't have time to teach you all this shit.
Right.
Because if you ask,
that's where I came in.
Right. And I have like Mark has so much music. He was kind of like, if you would say, hey, Jarvis, give me the rundown of this chorus in the third track on your first album. Mm-hmm. You could do it. We could sit down, you can show me whatever. Mark was like a reel-to-reel in his brain, and he would have to play through a whole song to get to what you're talking about for him to understand what part. It wasn't like, what's going on here, man? And he could tell you. Yeah. He needed someone that could figure it out. And so we did the E minor scale thing, and then he took his guitar off, and I'm like, okay, what's the next test? And it's like, do you smoke? And I'm like, yeah, I smoke weed, dude. And he's just like, all right, like you want it? Yeah. And then it was like, and then Brian was down there like the next day, and Brian was a little not unconvinced. I didn't know Brian at all at this point. Yeah. I was actually intimidated by Brian, and just because it's like, this is the dude that's been road donging it this whole time. Yeah. These are the guys. Like, I'm trying to impress these dudes, you know. And Nordy wasn't even in the picture yet because he's in Germany. But they said, all right, well, he can play a scale. He smokes, and they're like, "We're going." We were like, I smoked more dope for that day than I'd smoked in like a year, but I wasn't going to tell Mark that. I was just like, "All right."
He was just bombed, dude.
Going out of there wide-eyed. Like, almost had to call an Uber to go home. I wasn't even drinking, in space, bro. And Mark, famously smoked, 117 cigarettes an hour. Yeah. And so I came home. And my girlfriend was just like, take all your fucking clothes off and get the fuck out of here. It was just totally like, it like changed me. It probably aged me a couple years just soaking down there. But they essentially said, hey man, end of 2016, we're going on the last run with Josh. You need to know these 3 hours of tunes. And like 2 days before they left, Mark was like, there's this double LP we got. This is a new album. You need to do that too. Mark had probably 6 or 7 tracks done himself because he was tired of waiting on the bass to be done. Right. And when they got home, he's like, let's keep what I've got, you do the rest. I did the rest in only 2 days. Right. And then he's like, dude, this is sounding cool because I was learning like noidies fills from the record. Trying to make this cool, trying to impress the lads.
Yeah, like having a rhythm section.
Absolutely.
Right? What a novel concept.
That a lot.
Right. I noticed that on a lot of but that's the chaos that I liked. Yeah. But sometimes you need to lock in.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we finished the rest of Tequila King, and it ended up, I think, man, if I would say I was the most proud of one thing in Road, it would be that Mark told me, hey man, I want you to redo the other songs I actually played on too, bass. Right. And when I did, we agreed on keeping one song in the wake with Mark's bass tone because it was really good, picked tone, and I played with the fingers, but it fit. We kept that. But he said, hey man, I'm mixing this record different than the previous, The Blessed Curse. I'm turning all my rhythm stuff down, and it's because I want to feature you, and I really appreciate the work you did. Nice. And I don't really tell a lot of people that because I don't, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I'm super proud of that.
It happened. So.
It was an opportunity that I was lucky enough to take, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I had known these guys for a while, but when you came in the band, like, I was like, oh, man, this is like, we bonded right away, and it really felt like the right band, and it was like, all right, things are popping off.
Yeah, we were clicking.
Yeah,
we were clicking.
Doing a lot more gigs, too,
Yeah. We were two longest tours the road ever did.
We were a week away from, a lot of people kind of frown about it, or about the festival and stuff, but...
About what?
But we were a week away from playing Mark's Ultimate Festival before he passed.
What? And
that was Vakken. He passed a week before.
Yeah, that's right.
And, Vakken paid us anyway.
Right,
they.
So, yeah, let's come up to that point. So, I don't know how much you guys have talked about this publicly, but I was fucking there.
Yeah, you were there.
You sure were.
I remember we were playing and you came in to the crowd at the pit and you threw an empty beer can up on stage.
See, I don't.
Laughing.
Yes.
Yeah. It was.
I don't recall that. But.
Well, because a lot of other crazy stuff happened later that night, man.
Yeah, those were more my wilder days. But yeah, I remember. So the cool thing was, so we were playing Vakken for the first time too, and when we were stoked that you guys were on it too. But you guys were playing the Headbangers Open Air in Germany, and we had a day off on our run, and decided, well, let's go down there, So we get there early in the day. We're in the backstage, which isn't. It's literally it's technically backstage, behind the stage, but there's no. It's hot as fuck.
Yeah, the Anvil guys are there.
Anvil's there.
Yeah, we're smoking hash.
We had just toured them. We were smoking hash all day.
Yes.
It was a cool hang, and everything seemed right.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
To me, everything seemed right.
Right.
I've had some weird experiences in my life where people close to me have passed on, and for some reason, like, my last exchange with them is abnormally, it's like overly pleasant.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. 100%.
Like,
I know.
even like weird things. People, I can think of two other accounts of my life, people that were extremely close to me, that like the last time I saw them, like either whether it was the day before or the week before, it was like the best time we ever had.
Yeah.
First, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I felt like that day, it just had a really good vibe. And I do think the Wacken thing had something to do with it, because even though that was a cool, Headbangers Open Air at the time was a cool festival to play, like just the anticipation of what was coming and what we were all about to do, was a big fucking deal.
It was.
Yeah, and then just being at a festival with other bands that and like it's cool, right? So yeah, I remember that we were having a good day that day, we're partying in the sun and just.
But to kind of go back, me and Mark, we always shared a room on tour. He was comfortable, and we were always, we'd just lay in bed and relax and get our naps in beforehand. A couple old guys, grandpas, and he always asked me, brother, if something ever happened to me, you would continue on with the road? And I was like, absolutely not.
Really? Right.
And he goes, oh, he was kind of crushed,
right?
And I was like, brother, Manilla Road is you,
right?
I'm here for you,
right?
Okay, this is your baby,
yeah.
Right.
Okay,
we're here to glorify your art.
Okay, I was like, if something happens to you, I'm going to go do something different,
right?
And he immediately goes, oh, good luck with that. and I was like, okay, you cocksucker. I thought right there, I was like, all right, I know where I stand. I'm going to fucking prove you wrong, okay? And that's how we got about Sentry.
That's interesting, man. I really respect that.
That's to me. It was like, Mark, Manilla Road is you.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't find anybody to replace you that I would feel to do that job.
Right.
To my expectations,
right.
There's nobody.
Right.
Nobody.
Even I felt that way, and I obviously don't go back to 81.
Right.
With
no, right.
Yeah.
So there was no way that this was ever going to continue on as a Manilla Road. Yes. There's some styles there and some.
That's important.
Some stuff there
that like you can't. You have to keep your identity,
right? So yes, there are some things.
Yeah.
Mark, me and him. I watched him do research. I watched him. Write music and write lyrics and oh well, let's do this research. We did Atlantis Rising. We did all this research together. So I had that kind of penmanship idea. Right. So when going into it, I wanted my first album to be a tribute to him.
All right.
And so a lot of the lyric content is about his night, his last night, his death night.
So yeah, for those who don't know, that was the night he passed away. You guys played the show. You headlined that night.
No, Riot.
Oh, right. Okay, but you guys played at night.
Yes, we were the second to last band.
I think I was too drunk. Like, I do remember you going over to Mark a few times, I believe, during the set.
Yes.
And kind of like, I didn't know what was going on, but just kind of like, my impression was like, it was fucking brutally hot. Like, it was like...
But we were used to that, we're coming from Kansas, man. We're used to that shit. That doesn't... Now, the Germans, it was fucking them up, but us, we're used to it. Just drink water, we're cool, But I kept checking on him because that morning... When I woke up, I knew something wasn't right.
Really?
Because he was up already out of bed before me, which is never happens.
Okay.
He was downstairs, he was outside, and he was smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
And I'm like, brother, you doing okay? And he goes, I can't sleep.
Okay.
I think he was afraid to close his eyes.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I'll get to that point. He wanted to drive from the hotel to Headbangers.
Right.
I'm like, okay. So I let him, So he drove us there. We get checked in and everything. And he's just, I'm watching him the whole day. I'm looking back.
Yeah.
This is all, shit that I've noticed. Okay. So I'm looking back, and he was just taking it easy the whole day.
I noticed that. He was chilling on the couch.
Relaxing, taking it easy, enjoying the conversations with you and the Anvil guys and so make a long story short, we get on the stage and he kind of looks at me, and I take a photo, and it's him just standing there with his hands on his hip, and looking back, he was struggling. He was he was really struggling hard.
Like, what was he feeling? Like fatigue?
He was looking tired, quiet.
Right. Half of his heart was only working.
Right.
Okay.
We later found out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they said half of his heart had been dead for a couple weeks.
Fuck.
When they opened him up. It was just like there was no way that they were surprised.
How's this?
living.
Yeah, how's this guy here right now? Yeah.
So, to have somebody die in your arms, and a brother, for so long, and to feel the spirit, I felt his spirit leave. Yeah. And I told him, enjoy the journey, brother. Right. And I looked out, it was a red moon that night. It was the opposition. He said, today's the opposition, brother. Today is the day. If we were to cross the Rainbow Bridge, it'd be today.
No shit.
And he said that in our room earlier that day.
That's insane.
Yeah. So it was crazy. So, when Earth and Mars, they're all connected, and he brought the fire of Mars, man.
When I got the call the next morning, I was like, what the hell? And I was like, guys, wake up, And I was like, it just didn't seem real, you know? And then we had to continue on doing stuff, and then you guys had come out to one of our gigs a couple days later.
In Mannheim.
Yes. Yeah.
And I am so thankful for you for inviting us because, dude, you don't know the shape we were in.
Oh, well,
we needed you.
I was trying to just, what can we do? Mm-hmm. Do you know how like guilty it felt for me to be on a stage when you guys there and being like, okay, I'm gonna play this big fucking rock show.
Nah, man,
but do you know what I mean?
Sure, man. We needed it, dude, and as much as we were so lucky to have Noidy's house as a home base, because
of course,
if this had happened in Greece, Italy, where we were supposed to go later, we would have been fucked.
Absolutely, 100%.
But through Noidy and the German language efficiency, dude, it was great. But also that home base, man, that's where we were just partying with Mark, dude. Right. Brian and I, we found, hey man, to lighten it up a hair, dude. We were. Brian came in the morning, like a third morning after Market Pass. We were counting money and figuring out what the fuck we're going to do, how we're going to get this guy out of this country and home to his family. And Vakken got a hold of us and paid us our fee.
Yeah.
Just said sorry.
Yeah.
And that was incredible. So we're counting. Dude, where the fuck is this 250 euro? Like, what is, like, we're missing something or whatever. I go, God damn it. That old bird didn't tell anybody, and had used band money to pay for this big old brick of hash. and I go, dude, how much was the hash? And Brian's like, $250. And we were like, what? Yeah. And we were like, get it out now. And then we got it out, and we just like chilled a little bit. You guys got a hold of us, and so we were here in this home base and lucky to have it, man. But also, that's where we were. That was Mark's home base too.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a bummer, but we don't have anywhere to go, man. Right. And we're just waiting on like the mortuary in Hamburg, to get back to us. So man, we needed that kick in the ass.
How long were you guys in Germany after that?
We were there 10 days.
10 days.
After Mark passed. Mark passed on a Friday.
It felt like 2 months, dude. But
he passed on a Friday, and Saturday I got a hold of the mortuary in Hamburg.
Right.
She goes, oh, and she was a Man of War and Manilla Road fan. Okay. So she knew of the band.
Right.
She was great, and she goes, can you wire me money on Monday? And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
That's why we were counting, figure out all this stuff.
Yes. I was like, yes, I'll get you the money. And she said, okay, well, I could get in a lot of trouble here, but I'm going to go pick his body up. And I was like, oh, how would you get in trouble? She goes, because I can't pick up a body until the doctor signs off on the papers here.
Right.
And I'm going to go get this body and start the cremation before the doctor signs this shit.
We're trying to hit our round trip home.
Right.
And not
because
blow
I
a bunch
told
of
her
dough.
I needed to pick him up Tuesday morning the next week. And she goes, that's going to be tough, but I'll make it happen.
Yeah.
So cremated all that week. And then she went and picked him up Monday afternoon, took him home with her. Okay, his roommate.
Right.
And she said that he slept in the bed with her.
Mark's still scoring.
Yeah. Now this is funny.
Shout out Mrs. Mikulski.
So
that's this lady's
So
name.
I drive up to Hamburg from 7-hour drive from Frankfurt area.
Yeah.
So I get up there, stay the night. Monday night, Tuesday I go, and I'm there at 7 a.m. She don't open till 8, but she pulls up, in her convertible BMW, Mark's in the front seat, and they're, having a good time, So we signed some papers. She gives me a big hug and kiss, and thank you very much for everything. I make my way to Copenhagen because that's my second. It was supposed to be from Frankfurt to Copenhagen and then Copenhagen home. Right. I was going to meet Phil. He's going to go ahead and fly from Frankfurt on up.
With the guitars.
With the guitars and shit. Right. So I get into the hotel and everything's paid for already, and I see this guy behind the counter. I was like, hey, I have a room under Mark Shelton. And he goes, yeah, the kiosk over there. I'm like, okay, he just punch up the name, so I type up the name, and I'm like, fuck, I'm having a little trouble here. And he comes over and he looks, he goes, everything's paid for. And he goes, where's Mark? And I go, he's in my backpack. And he looks at me and he looks at the backpack, and I said, I had my best friend cremated. Right. And he goes, oh, fuck, man. He goes, go, hang on. Gets me the keys immediately.
Right.
Gets me upstairs, He said, come back down for some beers. Okay. So I went down, had some beers, fed me. Took care of everything. I didn't pay for shit, man. This dude was so fucking cool. So then Phil comes in, I'm fucking midnight. He comes in, I'm having some beers. All right, I'm getting up, So we go back downstairs, and he meets the guy, I had nice beers.
For a couple Tuborgs.
Yes. Yes. And they start talking soccer and stuff, so they hit it off, Yeah. Well, the next morning we go, because I had to get it cleared with the airlines,
of course.
To carry remains on with me.
Yeah.
So they go into like a screening room, okay, and he's looking at the screen and everything, and he's like this, and he's like, looks at his security guys, and they're looking. And it comes through, and he goes, what's inside? And I say, it's his titanium rod that he had in his knee.
Right.
From the Marine Corps.
And I went, he's still making music. And they're like, Mr. Patrick, have a nice flight home. So that's how I got him home, man.
Wow,
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
What a trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, Yeah, and I'm assuming, you guys are the ones having to call home and break this news to...
Try to, because
it was tough.
It happened so quick, and so many people saw an ambulance at, this is one of the closest hotels where Mark collapsed. Right. Let's put it that way. There's people all around.
Right.
If we didn't say anything or announce something or address it almost immediately... Yeah. Someone else was going to say something. This was like an hour and a half long deal.
And if it was going to be done, it had to be done by me.
Right.
Yeah.
Only.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And I did get a hold of his mother.
Right.
And his son.
Yeah.
But they were supposed to get a hold of the daughter.
Right.
And of course she wouldn't answer any phones or whatever.
It's in the middle of the night.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. That's the first thing she seen was my post. Mm-hmm. And it broke my heart. It really did.
Not a way you want to find anything like that out. It's horrible.
No.
But it had to be done like that.
Yeah.
And I think now she sort of understands that a bit. I hope she does.
Right.
We love these people, man.
I love these girls.
We just wanted to bring their dad home. I mean, because that's the thing, man, is that you talk about like the rock star, the 30-foot Vulcan or whatever, the banger, this is not Shark. This is Daddy.
Right.
Okay. And you, even Brian, he's got kids. I don't, but like, this is a different person to so many different people.
Of course.
And there's just going to be there's trouble sometimes with certain instances like this where it's like, man, I get it. I would be upset too. This is a very tough situation, and what it put everybody through from a distance. It's that stress. We all shouldered that. Mm-hmm. Trying to protect and do the right thing, but when you look back, you're like, oh man, we could have done this, we could have done that. Honestly, man, the fact that we got it done in that amount of time is a Christmas miracle, dude.
It was. Nordy goes, it's a 30-day process.
Sure.
Germans
are very by the book.
Oh my God.
That's what she put her ass on the line.
She sure did. And she broke a few laws doing it.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was great. We got him home. But the closure for me was Ventura.
Frost and Fire.
We saw you here in Tulsa with Night Demon. Mm-hmm. We came down the first 2 minutes thing, or it might have been just a show at Cain's. I think
they just flew us in as a one-off,
kind of a precursor to this
festival started.
Yes. And I remember you and Armand coming up to us and being like, "Hey, we want you guys in Ventura," and we're like, "Yeah, I'm sure that'd be fun or whatever." And you're like, "No, we're bringing you there. Get a hold of me when you guys get home." And
Jarvis, you don't know how much that meant to me.
Well, I mean, look, it was important for me to, I knew you guys weren't done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether you wanted to do, and I get why you didn't want to keep Manilla Road going, it would be easy to do
Absolutely, I could.
But I get why.
But you know what?
Yeah. I mean, even against the old man's wishes, like, you want to honor him, but at the same time, it's like,
you know what? Every time I get on stage and I do Ninth Wave or Road of Kings, I'm honoring my brother.
Yeah, of course.
And I feel him.
Do that.
I feel him every time I do it.
Yeah, and you can always do that. And you could do a whole Manilla Road set or whatever.
We are.
Yeah. I mean, you could do.
We're going to.
Yeah, and that's great. But, like, I understand, like, to just... There's so many people that carry on a name way longer than it needs to go.
Sure.
Like, everything ends. So it's okay for it to be what it was. It's okay,
Yeah.
But yeah, back to my point, like, bringing you guys out, like, it was really important for me to keep you guys involved in the scene.
It was
it was super important because I kind of felt... I mean, look, you guys are resilient, but I felt it was my responsibility. I felt like I was in the right position, at least.
You were. I mean, dude, you don't understand how much it helped.
Though. Like, just, it was more than friendship, though. I'm just saying, Like,
and it wasn't for you either. You guys just said, no. Like, you guys go have fun. Here's your backstage pass. There's all this beer over here, whatever. Roadie's in the backstage cranking out bowls.
Yeah.
And
and Larry Howe.
And Leland. You had Visigoth there playing.
Yeah.
Leland and I met there for the first time. I'm in a band called Savage Oath with Lee.
Yeah.
It led to a lot of other stuff, and you guys literally shelled out the dough just to let us hang out with our friends.
But it was important, man. Like, it's
beyond important.
What I'm saying is, like, it goes beyond the friendship, though. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, there's the reason we ever even did that festival was for the scene. It wasn't about. We sacrificed a lot by.
You guys worked all weekend. You guys were the stage-hands too.
That's why we don't do it anymore. Right. I mean, we fantasize with bringing it back, you know. But what we sacrificed so much for Night Demon to do that. I can't tell you the offers that we've had to turn down.
Right.
Like, because we had this thing going on, right?
Yeah, right.
Like October. You're going to get a lot of tour offers.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
Right?
Yes,
like,
sir.
So, but we, you know, and then, you know, that was when I brought you guys out, that was the final year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we announced it was going to be the last one. Mm-hmm. And everybody said I was crazy. And then shortly after, the pandemic hits, and all these other festival promoters that told me I was stupid lost their ass, and I was like, well, I had no commitments there.
Your ass is
intact.
Like, when you feel something, you got to go with your gut.
Right.
Like, about you not wanting to do the band, like I said, it would be so easy, but your gut told you something different, and you followed it.
We wanted to, like, when Sentry, when we finished the record, there was a discussion, hey guys, we're about to play Up the Hammers, and then we got tossed on Keep It True as well. What do we do? Are we going to play a road tour? And we all decided, no. Yeah. We have this new album, this new birth, and the first shows we played in Europe were only Sentry.
We did the tribute show, which was great.
Insane great.
Right?
And also, like, Closure. I mean, you want to talk about Closure, dude? Yeah. Jarvis rolling in hot, like, what songs am I playing again? And then
classic.
But we never worried about you, dude.
Of
course,
ever.
We had a lot of other
pro, dude.
We had a lot of other stuff to worry about, namely Leif Edling.
Dude, I walked up to Leif Edling. Okay, me. Yeah. Gianluca thought about shitting his pants. When I looked up, I walked right up to him and I go, "So you're ready for Necropolis?" "Yes." "Play it."
Under the bleachers at Keep It True after practicing.
I said, "Play it," because if you're not playing it, you're not playing it.
Like, that's the song,
right?
And he's like, he
wanted that song. Every bass player wanted that song.
Yeah, but like, he's like a legend, so you got to give it to him. But then at the same time, it's like whatever about status, like, this is way more important than anything.
That's right.
And if you can't just roll in,
and he was there early. And then there was a Scandinavian Airlines strike the day after.
Well, his band was supposed to play, and they
didn't make it.
Had to cancel.
The only reason he made it is because he was there to fart around at the tribute with us, so we were able to get him.
But he didn't make it to rehearsal.
No.
We all had a rehearsal.
No, the rehearsal was the night before. There was a pre-show in Dittingham for Keep It True, and he like sent me a WhatsApp, and John Lucas like. He speaks to you? I'm like, we had traded records a little bit. I was really lucky to know him, and he had wanted some old Road stuff, and he had some old Candlemass stuff. I'm like, let's trade, dude. The year after I met him with Mark. So I knew him, and email and stuff, and he sent me a WhatsApp like, hey, I'm at the hotel, like, the bar said they'll stay open an hour later if you want to come have a beer. And I don't know if you're a Candlemass fan or if you're just a fan of Doom, of heavy music in general. Leif Edling sending you messages, I got the bar to be open an hour later. Do you want to come have a beer? Okay, how do we do this? Right. So I walked from Dittingham in the dark for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, this place is like in the middle of fucking
nowhere.
Nothing. Yeah. And I'm like 20% battery. I got the flashlight on and GPS.
Yeah. Walking through trails in the wilderness.
Right. Yeah, like thinking I'm going to get eaten by a Mada or some weird German animal I've never heard of. But showed up, man. Had some brews. He did know the stuff.
Right.
I got to play a couple of his candle basses and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's a pro too,
Very much.
He was, the way in which he was playing them, I'm like, dude, there's not an alien on this planet that would try to play that song the way you're doing it, but you did it. Yeah. And I loved it. And
yeah, my relationship with him has gotten better over the years too, but it's all because, and again too, like, those Candlemass guys, like, they fawn over Sarah Thungle. And for me, I'm just like, what?
Right.
Sarah Thungle's just like, to me, I mean,
it's a cult thing, man.
To watch Leif and Mark together, we're like two little teenage boys.
Right.
Because Mark, really was the staple to getting Candlemass signed to Black Dragon Records in France. He was in '86 in France at Black Dragon and going through training shit. And there was a tape on his desk, and they go, this band, out of Sweden, and they played it.
Right.
And after the first run through on one side, Mark looked at him and said, if you don't sign that band, you're stupid.
He already knew. Right. He knew Nemesis.
I guess when you put it into perspective, bands like Serathungal and Manilla Road, like they were around first, so that's the thing is, they might not have been known popularly at all throughout the world, but the handful of people in other countries that got a hold of those records collectively are the ones that started bands that changed the world.
Well, see, Mark was getting reports from like Radio Poland, Manilla Road, all the Crystalogic stuff. That's where it was really being pumped out on Radio Poland.
Right.
So a lot of people in that whole area, with ham radio, whatever, was getting Radio Poland for their metal stuff. That's where really Manilla Road got big.
But it's funny because back in the day, it's like as a U.S. band, that's really what your focus is. You know what I mean? Maybe England,
right?
But like you're like, and these bands are getting zero traction here, and there's such a barrier to entry in the 70s and 80s. You can't. It's not like today where you could just go on the internet and find another band and go, hey, we're going to come play in your town. Okay, great. Or air travel is just easy. It's like, dude, no, you had a travel agent, or you had to walk to to airport and try and figure out.
Yeah, there's no Uber, dog.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, just because we're kind of coming up on time here, I have to talk about Sentry. Well, no, really though. I mean, it's all we can talk for hours.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But so I bring you guys out to Frost and Fire again. My thing was like, I gotta have these guys around and just even though communication is so well, Wichita is like. None of it. I'm the only guy who goes there. You know what I mean?
There's 8 destinations from our airport. That's it.
Yeah,
it's
secluded. But I'm the only dude who goes there.
Yes, sir.
And I don't even go there that often. But I'm just saying, like, I was really, really afraid of what was going to happen to you guys. I really was, dude. I was just like, I know the road's
you were talking to me like, dude, if you relocate, I will find you a band. What do you want to do? I remember you talking to me about that.
Yeah, I was just like, what, like these guys, I can't. This scene needs these guys in their lives. Like this is very important. It was more important for me that the fans needed you guys more than I did. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, come on, dude, right? So anything I could do to at least help facilitate that, right? And then you came up and sang Necropolis with Visigoth, which was fucking amazing, right?
Yep.
So there's some time here. The pandemic happens, right?
Yeah. After the tribute show, we had decided, hey, we do want to carry on with Kali, who was the guitar player, the main guy.
He was doing all Mark's stuff. He was kind of like, in a way, like you and him were kind of like the musical directors almost, right?
Absolutely. He and I, we delegated who's doing this, who's not. Jarvis, what do you want to play? Leif Edling. And then Kali worked with guitar players. Long story short, we decided to go on. Then pandemic happens. So we worked on this Sentry album the entire time through the pandemic. Yeah. And we were searching for styles, searching for this. No, we don't like that. Kali pumped out so much. And without Kali, first of all, the tribute doesn't happen. Second of all, Sentry doesn't happen.
Right.
Because, as you know, Noity can fit in almost any heavy metal band. Sure. But we asked him, hey, man, would you go on do something with Kali? Yeah, sure, let's do it. Yeah. And that record was...
Did Noity want to... What was Noity's feelings on continuing Manilla Road?
Oh, my God.
Because I feel like he's the kind of guy that probably would want to keep...
Absolutely.
He was the #1 proponent of trying to put road tunes in a Sentry set, and we kind of put our foot down and said, no, we need to make our own statement here. Yes. But where he broke me, and he was right, was, hey, I'm not talking about Necropolis. What if we played Ninth Wave, a jam where we could go in that? And it fit with Sentry well.
Right.
And so that record came out in March of 24.
Yeah, last year.
Okay. And immediately we've got some really cool offers. And man, so without those guys, you're right, man. We kind of would have been off on our own. Brian and I are smart guys, but we're not producers. I wouldn't call myself a songwriter.
Right.
But Kali and Noity really were the glue that brought us back into this quote-unquote scene. Yep. And the tribute show also led to Noity and I being asked to be an Iron Sword.
Right.
It led to Brian being asked to do more guest spots on like the Iron Sword, the last Iron Sword record, Servants of Steel, stuff like that. So being asked to go back to Frost and Fire, just discussed with you, the tribute show led to the Sentry album, and that led to us being involved in this incredible, beautiful scene of people that we are in again now, man.
Yeah. Would you feel though that like the band is somewhat a continuation of Manilla Road? Like, because even like, what do you? How do you feel?
Absolutely.
How do you feel stylistically about the band? Are you trying to write different types of things from it? Are you consciously going, hey, that sounds too much
because we have Iron Sword to do that, okay?
Right.
We call,
that's good.
We call Iron Sword Manilla Road, or more Manila than Manila in some cases, right?
Yes.
So there's already people doing that. And I think with Sentry, the goal, man, was just to continue playing metal with our brothers. There's no Manila impression, there's no whatever. And my secondary was to get... My goal, my personal number one goal, was to have enough time to allow Bryan to be himself, step out from this shadow. Not bad, nothing negative. But guys, we have all the time in the world to do this. It doesn't have to be this, it doesn't have to be that. I don't care if it's Oi. I don't care if it's Doom. Let's do this, and let's let Bryan take his time and find himself with what he wants to put forth into this world.
Igniting fires of Mars, ripped from the womb of earth, spawned from divine desire. Above you see the ravens, death lights the funeral pyre.
you got two Americans and 2 Germans, right?
Yep.
So it's like, you have to have some in-person stuff. I mean, people write records all the time, like back and forth, but a lot of time those people have a deep rapport where they've been playing together for years and they know how to do that. But at one point they have to come together.
But it's funny, because Collie would send, a recorded piece over, and what we would do to it, he would never have thought.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, we would change the dynamics of what he was wanting to perceive,
Right.
So it was.
So it's a full collaborative.
Absolutely.
Effort,
Yeah. There's stuff on there that Noity had like an acoustic guitar in his house. It was like, I think, sending voice notes over Messenger. I remember he literally played drums on pots and pans at home and sent us like some rhythm. We're like, dude, what is this? So the next one, which we've already got some new material brewing, man. I think it's only going to get better for us as far as how satisfied we are with our own stuff.
Yeah.
And as far as it being a continuation of Road, sure, man, it is.
Yeah.
Sure, but we're not going to say that. We're not doing it to say it's this or anything. But, we got the same, Brian got the same painter, Paolo Girardi, to do the cover art.
Right.
We're on the same label, High Roller. That doesn't mean that it's as good as Manilla Road or it's this or that. It's just more like, you know what, man? This guy sitting next to me here goes back to 1981 with Mark, okay?
Yeah.
You think he learned a few things?
Yeah, right.
That doesn't mean that he is Mark or he's this or he's that, because no one can imitate that guy. But, of course, man. Hell Roadie sounds a lot like... Hell yeah, he does.
Yeah.
He's been around him longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
So you're not ever going to get away from that, but why run from it if you've got it?
No.
Embrace it and use it as like a launch pad to do what we want to do.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Manilla Road's always in my heart, man.
It's our favorite. It's our favorite band of all time.
Yes.
Period.
I'm sorry. There's a lot of bands that's come and gone, but Manilla Road, it's still top for me.
Yeah, and it's good, and it's like you guys are still keeping that legacy alive, with everything, and kind of keeping it out of the bootleggers' hands as much as you can.
We're trying.
As much as you can.
Yes.
It's tough.
That's a constant battle.
But I'll tell you though, it's a good thing, because when Sirathungal died in '92, it was 25 years of the world just ran wild and just decided for them, they had no say, that this band is now public domain.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do whatever we want with it, and it's ours now, And a lot of the things was I was going to Europe and showing these guys, like, look, there's a huge fan base, and like there's a lot of money that people are making off of you guys.
I remember the signing session at Keep It True.
Absolutely.
When they came over.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or even the signing session at Frost and Fire 1. You weren't there, but Manilla Road was the headliner of that. It was a one-day event.
Yeah.
And all they were doing was signing autographs, and people were coming from all over the world for that.
That's
right. But, yeah, man, what a trip. What a trip, right? But hey, here we're all here, right? Okay.
Lucky to be here, dude.
Right? And like since you guys put out that record, I mean, we did Up the Hammers together,
We played the same warm up,
Yeah, it was great. And then now we're here in Tulsa, and we did you guys were in Houston last week.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the way it is, and like there's nothing more to be said about just sticking with it. I think the worst thing that people ever do is quit because things are tough, or because maybe some level of success isn't there that they want to see, and it's always
that was a lot of Mark's issues. He thought he should have been a little bit more successful than he was.
Right.
And it's a very humbling thing, to go out there and all these years and do what he did, and just to be the king of the underground.
Yeah, but the same with the Sirathungal guys, it's even worse with that. I mean, they were around.
Right.
They were in fucking LA, dude, during that whole time, and they were on every label. They were. I mean, dude, the reason Metallica met Cliff Burton is because Sirathungal canceled the show and Metallica took their spot. It's a famous story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they changed. These guys all changed the landscape of metal in a way, indirectly. Mm-hmm. It's not always. It's weird how life works. Like they might not be on the Mount Rushmore in a commercial or world famous way, but the things that they did without these bands, there's no Celtic Frost, there's no Candlemass, there's no Metallica the way we know it, you know what I mean? So it's like the influence is felt, it doesn't always translate into monetization.
Yep.
Like Fats Domino died with nothing, but look what he did for rock and roll. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's all about, we can't take it with us. I've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul. You know what I mean? So, like, who fucking cares?
But the thing that was always a good reminder, with Mark was, no matter how hard or how far we come, when I leave this earth, my music's still here.
Yeah.
For everybody to still enjoy.
20 plus albums.
But see, I'm glad you guys are here to say this, that he talked about these things.
Absolutely.
He talked about,
death.
Yeah.
What's going on, his family, we talk about our kids, how proud he was of his kids, it was.
But like when people die suddenly, it's the most heartbreaking thing is there's often a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah. Dude. I mean, 10 times a week you think, man, I wish I could have asked him about this or that.
Right.
And I think, my God, dude. I'm thinking about
that's not with me.
Right.
You had the time. You had the time.
One thing, like my mom really misses her mom a lot, and I was really close with my grandmother. And she's always like, I wish I could. They would talk every morning, and she would always like, I wish I could just talk to my mom. And I think about it, and I told her like recently, I was like, I talk to her all the time.
Yeah.
And I always get the answers because I think like I always know what she would say about something,
exactly
right? Like I know her so well. I can I can have this conversation with her and just I will get the answer, It's like if you know somebody that well, just trust that you'll get the answer from that,
Yeah,
so,
man.
It was funny, because, I'm kind of a spiritual kind of guy, and, I'm a big believer, afterlife, redbirds come in your life, cardinals, they visit, it's part of them,
Yeah.
And right after Mark passed away, I always had this redbird come to my house, sit on the fence and just sit there for hours, and I just talked to him. I was like, hey, Shark, how you doing?
Yeah.
Whatever, Wednesday when we played Wichita, one landed on my fence.
That's awesome.
And I was like, hey, brother, you here for the show? I hope you enjoy it tonight.
Right.
And, that's the kind of thing that I speak to him all the time, and I know what he would say, I know he would be proud of me.
Right.
Absolutely.
Ultimately proud of me.
Yeah.
So.
All right, guys. Thanks for the chat.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
Very much.
All right.
Hey guys, Nesbitt here. If you'd like to support Night Demon and this podcast, the best way to do it is to become a Night Demon subscriber. Not only will you be doing your part to support a true heavy metal band out there really living it, you'll also gain access to a ton of extras. Bonus audio content, a subscriber-only merch store with rare items from the band's archives. You can stream never-before-heard demos and unearth live concerts from the live vaults. Communicate with the other Night Demon diehards on an exclusive subscriber forum, and gain early access to all press releases, album pre-orders, new merchandise, and a ton more. And another thing that I think is pretty cool is Night Demon will be donating 10% of every subscription fee to the Metal Cares Foundation, which is a charitable fund the band started in 2014 to aid those in our metal community. So head over to nightdemon.net/subscriber and join us as we make heavy metal history together as one. And on a side note, I'll personally think you're a grade A badass.
Thanks for listening to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. Head over to nightdemon.net, click on the subscriber tab, and sign up to access exclusive weekly bonus content. If you would like to donate to support the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast, you can do so through PayPal at paypal.me/nightdemonmetal. Additionally, if you have not already done so, please subscribe, like, rate, and review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All hail, Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. This is Dusty Squires chiming in to tell you about my brand new signature sticks from the London Drumstick Company. I've dreamt of having my very own drumsticks ever since I was a wee lad, and LDC made that a possibility for me. Founded in 2016 in London, England, the birthplace of heavy metal, the London Drumstick Company has trailblazed a path through the music industry and taken the drummer world by storm. When I met them for the first time, they knew their product was going to withstand the beatings of a Night Demon show. They took the time to work with me on getting everything just right. The balance and weight of my sticks are the same no matter what, and the durability is bar none the best I've ever had. I know my sticks will last through the set night after night. I'm truly honored to work with a company that caters to their players the way LDC does. Their innovation and attention to detail is what separates them from the rest of the stick makers out there. Their custom stick sleeves are unbelievable and really make the entire presentation complete. Wait until you see the design they came up with for me. It blew my mind and was a surprise to say the least. They have all kinds of amazing swag, including hoodies, t-shirts, drummer shorts, drum keys, stick bags, towels, face masks, practice pads, and much, much more. Even if you're not a drummer, you can be a part of Demon history and order my brand new signature sticks direct from their website. How cool is that? And to top it off, the London Drumstick Company are giving an exclusive offer to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. Go to londondrumsticks.co.uk and receive a 15% store-wide discount using promo code DEMONSTICKS. All capital letters, no spaces, Demon Sticks. DEMONSTICKS. I can't thank everyone there enough for the opportunity to be a part of their family and for them trusting me with their amazing products. See you metal maniacs on the road very soon. And yes, the wood chips will be flying.
Greetings, boils and ghouls. This is your comrade, the Crypt Keeper here, reporting dead from the sanctuary of the strange. Tonight's macabre myth is a fright-filled feature, one overflowing with monsters, madness, and magic.
Visit our website at monstersmadnessandmagic.com. To stay up to date on all the dark dealings within the sanctuary of the strange, enjoy the show.
Hey Metalheads, I'm Mark and I host the Metal Forge. Let me tell you about the show. The Metal Forge features the best underground metal from all over the world. We spend every week with a different artist with interviews, in-depth conversations, and most of all, the music. We also feature audience interactivity where you can submit your questions to the upcoming guests. New episodes are out every Friday at noon Eastern Time at metalforgeradio.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking Podcast, a non-genre based, all-ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
Okay, metalheads, you've been complaining that there has not been a channel that plays all of the heavy metal videos from past, present, and future for years and years at this point. Well, that time is over. Heavy Metal Television is back. HeavyMetalTelevision.net is the website. Go there. You can see videos playing 24/7, 365, all the time, all the best from the old school, the new school, and everything in between. Check it out, HeavyMetalTelevision.net. It is where the metal is.